got pitcher questions, and I hope that Chris has answers. Jacob deGrom had one of his better starts of the season up against the Athletics. 6 shutout innings, 7 strikeouts, 16 whiffs on 65 pitches. And you might be wondering, 65 pitches? What's going on here? Well, the score was 12-zip after the 6th inning, so they chose to play it safe here. And Chris, I guess this isn't really a question rather than a statement. Maybe you agree, but it kind of feels like Jacob deGrom is relearning how to pitch at this velocity. And the last 3 starts, only 3 earned runs allowed, 20 strikeouts to 1 walk. I think he's starting to figure it out.
Yeah, I think if there's a problem with Jacob deGrom, it's probably one of perception, right? Like, because his name is Jacob deGrom and he pitched like an elite closer, but as a starter for 5 seasons, I think people were just like, okay, he's just going to do that. He's healthy. And I was never quite as sure that was going to be the case. And I'm still not. Like, I think this is the closest he's looked to the classic Jacob deGrom that we've ever seen. Especially the 4-seamer. You know, the velocity was up a little bit, 97.4 miles per hour. Still well down from his peak, but it was up about a half mile per hour, a little more than that from where he'd been this season. And he got 8 whiffs with it. It's the first time that he's really had the elite whiffs with the 4-seamer. And that's been the biggest difference for Jacob deGrom. It's just the 4-seamer hasn't been a dominant pitch for him. You know, 18% whiff rate entering today. That's the lowest it hadn't been below 25% since 2017, I think. No, 2016, when it was 24.9%. And the velocity is the lowest it's been since 2019 as well. I think Jacob deGrom's really good. I think on a per inning basis, I probably expect him to be a top 15 starting pitcher the rest of the way. Is that going to be worth what you drafted him for? Well, if he stays healthy, probably. I don't know how to factor in the injury risk here. Do I think throwing less hard, like, my thought has always been, not just for Jacob deGrom, but for every pitcher, it's not the max velocity you throw at. It's not how hard you throw, because every pitcher is different. Everybody's built to withstand different things. And I think it's more about how often you are pitching near your max. And I just have no idea. Like, is Jacob deGrom still capable of hitting 101 and sitting 99 and he's intentionally throwing 97? Then I think he's probably more likely to stay healthy. I just don't know if that's the case. Like, that's what he said, but I don't know. Like, because I don't think he would come out and say, I can't throw hard anymore. So I say it all to say that I think Jacob deGrom's going to be good moving forward. I think he's going to be very, very good. I think he's going to be an ace. I'm still not expecting Jacob deGrom to be who he was from 2019 to 2023 when he was on the mound, right? Like the 12 K per 9, the sub 2 ERA. I don't think he's that guy anymore. I still think he's really good, though.
Yeah. And obviously ranking him is one of the toughest things to do for us as part of our job. But, you know, instead of expecting him to pitch like a top 5 pitcher when he's healthy, you're expecting something like a top, 12 to 15 starting pitcher when he's healthy. But also you have to factor in that injury risk. And because of that, maybe you drop him down a little bit lower. So maybe, he's you rank him as like a top 24 starting pitcher rest of season, just so you do factor in a little bit of that injury risk with deGrom moving forward.
He's in the 16 to 20 range, I'm pretty sure, for me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And it's kind of similar to Spencer Strider without the hamstring injury, right? Like, I don't think he's going to be the best pitcher in baseball. I think he's going to be must start. It's just, I don't know how to account for the injury risk with either of those guys.
All right, let's talk about Carlos Rodon, who makes it 3 strong starts in a row. This one at the Orioles. I believe he took a perfect game into the 6th inning of this one. 6 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, 10 whiffs on 91 pitches. And over his last 3 starts, it's 19 innings, only 6 hits allowed, 2 runs, 7 walks is high, 24 strikeouts for Carlos Rodon. And the biggest thing that stands out this season, Chris, the ground ball rate. 47% ground ball rate for Rodon, who in his career has been a fly ball pitcher. So the question here, is this the best version of Carlos Rodon we've seen for the Yankees? One that is putting the ball on the ground more?
The best version that we've seen for the Yankees, yes. This is another one where I don't think that Giants era upside is here at all, because the fastball just isn't the same kind of dominant pitch. But like the fact that he's getting more ground balls, well, that makes sense because he's going from a 90 to 92% four-seamer and slider usage at his peak to throwing changeups 15% of the time and sinkers about 10% of the time before this start. And, curveballs about 8% of the time. And so those are three pitches in particular that you would expect to generate more ground balls. So, I think the command is going to come and go. It does from pitch to pitch with Carlos Rodon, frankly. But I do think the loss of his dynamic fastball has forced him to become a more complete pitcher. And I do think this is going to be his best season with the Yankees if he stays healthy.
Let's talk about Taj Bradley, who turned in a quality start against the Royals. 7 innings, 2 runs, 3 walks to 2 strikeouts. Did allow some hard contact in this one. Just seems like a really confusing pitcher so far this season. It's 3 strikeouts or fewer in 3 straight. The control has not been very good for Taj Bradley. He's doing, I can't even say, I was going to say okay job keeping runs off the board, but it is a 4.58 ERA for Taj Bradley. So what have you made of him so far this season, Chris? Is this definitely someone that needs to be held on to?
Yeah, I'm not dropping him, but the lack of strikeouts especially has been concerning. And, you try to look for like one specific culprit, and it's just kind of all of his pitches have not been getting the whiffs that we're used to. But I don't see anything that really stands out that should make that the case. He is throwing his four-seamer around as hard as he did last year, but everything else is up pretty consistently. His curveball's up about 2 miles per hour, almost 3. Cutter and splitter around 1 to 1.5 miles per hour. So there could be something to just not getting as much velocity separation and hitters being able to time him a little better. That could be an explanation for why Taj Bradley has just been a little underwhelming. Nick Pollock has this term, he calls pitchers like this cherry bombs, and I think that's what Taj Bradley is, where there's going to be some really exciting moments and there's going to be some real blowups, and it's going to be hard to ride the ride. We need more strikeouts to make that ride worth it, though. So that's the thing I want to see him improve on moving forward. I'm not dropping him, but certainly not a must-start pitcher right now.
All right, let's talk about Freddy Peralta, who had a quality start at the White Sox. 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts. And his velocity was way down in this one. All 4 pitches down between 1.6 and 2.1 miles per hour. And I didn't see anything or any reason or read any quotes or hear just anything about the velocity being down here. I did just kind of pose the question on Twitter and asked if anybody saw anything. And I had a couple of people speculating that like maybe things were just off in that stadium because like the velocity was down for all the pitchers in that game. So it is a possibility here. But any concern on the velocity for Freddy Peralta?
Maybe. Like if he's hurt, then yes. If not, then I would think it's probably
pretty well. But it is
he still pitched pretty well. Look, the thing with Freddy Peralta this season, and I don't think we've talked enough about him because he's just been good. It's a different version of Freddy Peralta than the one we've historically gotten used to, which has always been very fastball heavy, still fastball heavy. But then the slider has always been the clear number 2 pitch for him, throwing it between 19 and 27% of the time over the previous 3 seasons. This season, his slider usage entering today was 8%, and he only threw it 6 times on 93 pitches today. So that is interesting. He's also throwing his slider harder. than ever. So it's a different type of pitch, and his curveball is now the pitch that he's throwing 13% of the time, and the changeup's been the number 2. Well, all 3 of those pitches have been awesome. They've been getting tons of whiffs before today. Curveball was okay today, but everything else only 2 and 1. But yeah, it's a different version of Freddy Peralta. I hope that there's nothing wrong with him, because I think he's a must-start pitcher the way he's pitching right now. So as long as it's just a one-off, I'm not worried about it.
All right, control problems continue for Bryce Miller. 5 shutout innings, 5 walks, 6 strikeouts. He now has 4+ walks in back-to-back starts, 3+ walks in 4 of 6 outings this season. He only had 3 or more walks in 5 of 31 starts last year, and control was a calling card for Bryce Miller. The question here, Chris, was what is up with the walks? But I will answer my own question, because I saw this tweet from Daniel Kramer, who covers the Mariners from MLB.com, after the game. A frustrated Bryce Miller said that his back, quote, locked up on him pregame to the point where he opted not to sit down in between innings and make it worse. He also dealt with arm soreness earlier this month, which sounds kind of scary. Arm soreness.
Extremely scary, yes.
And yeah, his back locking up on him, and, like losing control is, could sometimes kind of preface a pitcher injury coming. I hope that isn't the case, but seeing a quote like this it's kind of scary.
It's certainly not what you want to see from a guy who's been just a little bit off in the early going. The walk rate double what it was last season. You look at today, he was struggling to throw the sinker in the strike zone. He was kind of struggling to throw the splitter in the strike zone, although that, you're kind of used to that. I don't know if he didn't have the feel for the knuckle curve, which he's thrown about 13% of the time this season. He only threw 2 of them today. Just feels like he's going through it and may not be 100% healthy. That note about the back and the arm soreness certainly makes me think that he just hasn't been healthy. And I don't know, like, is he likely to turn that around and get healthy? Well, pitching through it probably isn't going to help. So that's concerning, but
I almost wonder if he himself or the Mariners are maybe pushing him a little bit just because they have so many injuries.
That's
already.
The concern. Yeah. With Logan Gilbert and George Kirby already on the IL, they're 2 horses like that. I think if circumstances were different, if Emerson Hancock wasn't already in the rotation, they might just sit Bryce Miller down. And the concern is obviously, one, that he gets hurt worse and can't pitch, but 2, just that he never gets right as a result of it and just kind of muddles through the season. It's not like he's so proven that we can say for sure that Bryce Miller's an ace. So, I'll be updating my rankings later this week, and I think Bryce Miller is someone that I've kind of dropped a little bit. I think it's probably been more guys rising above him, and then my most recent update, I do think I dropped him a little bit. He's down to 30. That feels too high. I would rather have Jack Flaherty than him. I might rather have Brian Wu than Bryce Miller at this point. I think Brian Wu is actually the better pitcher. If Bryce Miller's not 100% healthy, I don't really know how I can ding Brian Wu for potentially getting hurt in the future, perhaps. So yeah, I do think Bryce Miller probably going to drop more to the 40. Right? Like, would you rather have Jesus Lazaro or Bryce Miller?
Lazaro has a bunch of injury risk himself.
Yeah.
Love what I've seen this season. That is a really good question. Knowing what we know right now, I think I'd probably say Lazaro.
Would you rather have Nick Pavetta or Bryce Miller?
I don't think I would. Nick Pavetta is doing he looks a little bit different this year as a pitcher, and obviously pitching in San Diego, I think he can have a better season than he did have in Boston. I don't completely buy it, so I think I wouldn't take that. But if I have Bryce Miller right now, and anyone who hasn't read or heard this news, I might try and flip him for a top 30 starting pitcher, and
sure,
someone that you don't have injury concerns about right now. So
yeah, because my thing is, I get the concerns we have about Jesus Lazaro and Brian Wu. I get that. if they're currently healthy and Bryce Miller isn't, does it really make sense to ding those guys for injuries relative to a guy who is already dealing with something? I don't know. It's a fair question, but I tend to lean just give me the guys who are currently healthy and stop trying to predict the future.
Well, speaking of Nick Paveta, 5 1/3 innings, 3 runs, 9 strikeouts, 10 whiffs on 89 pitches. And he's allowed 3 earned runs or fewer in all 6 of his starts. He has 6+ strikeouts in 4 straight. Chris, is Nick Paveta a breakout or is this a sell high?
Maybe both. I can straddle that fence. Like, I don't think he's a sub-2 ERA guy. He has a 1.78 ERA. I still might put my expectation for him the rest of the season at a 3.78 ERA, given how much he historically has struggled with hard contact. Now, that hasn't been an issue for him. He actually, his strikeout rate's a little lower than it was last season. The walk rate's basically identical. And the biggest change is that he's just giving up so much less, not even hard contact, because his hard hit rate is actually the same. It's just he's giving up less productive contact. His expected WOBA on contact 384 last year, 347 this year. He's gone from below average to slightly better than average. Given his history, given how long that stat takes to stabilize, I tend to assume that Nick Paveta will regress in that regard and probably be more of a mid to high 3s ERA guy. That would still be the best season in Nick Paveta's career. So again, I think both.
Would you, if you could, turn Nick Paveta into Zach Gallen or Luis Castillo, would you do that? Or would you try and shoot higher?
I certainly have those guys ranked higher than Nick Paveta. I would try to get more, for sure.